The story begins by showing a man named Atsushi starving because he was kicked out of an orphanage. One day he tries to help a drowning person, but it turns out he wants to commit suicide. Because of that he is very angry. He is named Dazai. Because he feels sorry to see Atsushi starving, Dazai takes Atsushi to a restaurant. There is also Dazai's friend named Kanikita. It turns out they are from armed detectives, and it is a superpowered detective group. Atsushi said that if he met a tiger monster several times, Dazai suspected something. That's why he brought Atsushi to catch a tiger monster. At night, Atsushi suddenly turns into a tiger. It turns out that he is a tiger monster that often attacks residents, but Dazai is able to beat Atsushi easily. Atsushi is very surprised when he turns out to be a tiger monster. Hopefully the members of the armed detective will come to Dazai's place. It turns out that Dazai wants to make Atsushi a member of the armed detectives, but Atsushi faints. The next day he woke up at his house. He was very surprised to see Dazai, who wanted to commit suicide at his house. Luckily Atsushi helped him. Then Atsushi said that he didn't want to be a member of armed detectives. Then Dazai takes to find another job. Suddenly they meet Kanikita. He says if there is a terrorist who broke into the detective armed office. When they got there, it turned out that the terrorist was holding a woman hostage. Kanikita and Dazai tried to negotiate with the terrorist, but they failed. Dazai orders Atsushi to distract the terrorist. He does well, and Kanikita manages to catch the terrorist, but suddenly the terrorist triggers the detonation button. Everyone is terrified. Atsushi hugs the bomb. He thinks if he will die. It turns out the bomb didn't explode, because it was just a fake bomb, and all of this is a test to determine Atsushi is worthy to become a member of armed detectives. Then the leader of the armed detective named Fukuzawa said that Atsushi was a new member of the armed detective. The terrorist and the hostage were also members of the armed detective. Their names were Tenzaki and Naomi. A few days later, a woman named Higuchi came to the headquarters of the armed detective group. She told that a group of gangsters was disrupting her company. Atsushi, Naomi and Tenzaki, who were ordered to carry out the mission. Before leaving, Tenzaki told Atsushi to be careful with a man named Akutagawa, because he is a high-ranking member of a superpowered mafia group called the Port Mafia. Atsushi and his friends start their mission, but it's just a trap set by Higuchi, because it turns out he is also a member of the Port Mafia. He makes Naomi seriously injured. Luckily Tenzaki is able to beat Higuchi. Suddenly Akutagawa comes and beats Tenzaki easily. Atsushi is very scared to see that, because Akutagawa also wants to attack him. Suddenly Atsushi turns into a tiger. He fights against Akutagawa. But Akutagawa is too strong. Luckily Dazai comes to help him. Akutagawa stops attacking Atsushi because he is afraid of Dazai, because Dazai has the power to eliminate other people's powers. Akutagawa also said that his real goal was to get Atsushi's head, because tiger human heads are very expensive on the black market, and it was finally discovered that Dazai was a former member of the Port Mafia. Then Akutagawa left. The next day Atsushi and the others survived, because they were treated by a doctor named Yasano. She is also a member of the armed detectives, but she treats other people in a dangerous way. Moving on to the Port Mafia site, a man named Ryuru leads an attack to destroy a factory. In fact, everyone in the place is killed. Atsushi happens to be near the factory. He becomes very scared of the Port Mafia, but it turns out that the Port Mafia also wants to attack the armed detective base. This time it is shown that Ryuru is preparing to attack the armed detective base. He will go with Chiwara and Jin. They are strong fighters in the Port Mafia. An hour later, Ryuru and his friends arrived at the armed detective base, and they immediately started fighting. Atsushi heard an explosion at the armed detective headquarters. He was very afraid that his friends would die, but it turned out that the armed detective was able to defeat the Port Mafia easily. Atsushi didn't expect that the members of armed detective were so strong. But Atsushi was surprised to see a member of the armed detective named Rampo, because he was too relaxed and never fought. Kanikita said that Rampo is the smartest person in armed detective, because he has ultra-deduction abilities. Then Kanikita ordered Atsushi to carry out a mission with Rampo. They would investigate a murder case, but it turned out that the police had already taken on the mission, because he did not trust the armed detective. Suddenly Dazai appears, who wants to kill himself at that place. Then Rampo challenges the police to solve this case in under 1 minute, but they say that it's impossible. Then Rampo uses his power. He is lucky to solve this case in a few seconds. It turns out that the killer is a member of the police. He also managed to show all the evidence. Atsushi is very surprised to see Rampo's strength, but Dazai says that Rampo is an ordinary human because Dazai once tried to remove Rampo's power, but Rampo can still use his power. A few days later, armed detective gets a mission to investigate missing people. Atsushi is assigned with Dazai and Kunikata to investigate this case. They went to the place of a hacker named Taguchi to get information. They managed to get the last photo of the kidnapped victim, then they went there by taxi. When they got there, they saw many people trapped, but they could only save a woman named Sasaki, then they took care of her. Then they went to investigate the taxi driver, because he looked suspicious, but suddenly Akutagawa attacked them, because it turned out that the taxi driver was a member of the port mafia. They fought Akutagawa, but suddenly Akutagawa left. Then they get news that there are terrorists who have planted many bombs to blow up the city. They reported it to headquarters. Fortunately, Rampo managed to find all the bombs, so they all divided into several teams to look for the bombs. Atsushi, Dazai, and Kunikata went to the center of the bomb. When they wanted to deactivate the bomb, they were prevented by a group of people with superpowers, but Atsushi and his friends were stronger, that's why they won easily, and they also deactivated the bomb. Several days later, Taguchi and Dazai managed to realize that Sasaki is the one who wants to blow up the city. She also cooperated with Port Mafia to do some experiments. When they wanted to arrest her, suddenly she shot Taguchi, but she failed. Because of that, Taguchi killed Sasaki. This time it is shown that a girl named Kyuka kidnaps Dazai, but the members of Armed Detective do not care when they hear that Dazai has disappeared. Then Atsushi goes on a mission together with Yasano, but suddenly a person named Motojiro plants a bomb on the train they are on. Atsushi tries to find the bomb, while Yasano fights against Motojiro. When looking for the bomb, Atsushi meets Kyuya. It turns out that Kyuya is very strong. She makes Atsushi seriously injured, because Atsushi can't bring out his strength. Whereas Yasano was also seriously injured when fighting Motojiro, Yasano suddenly recovered. It turns out that her strength was active when she was injured, and she was able to win easily. While Atsushi manages to bring out his power, it turns out that the bomb is in Kyuya's body, and the Port Mafia orders him to blow himself up. Luckily, Atsushi manages to save Kyuya. After hearing about Kyuka's past, which was often tormented by the Port Mafia, they decide to make Kyuya a member of the new armed detectives, and Atsushi is assigned to look after Kyuya. When Atsushi was accompanying Kyuka, suddenly Akutagawa came to attack them, and he kidnapped Atsushi. Moving to the place where Dazai is being kidnapped by the Port Mafia, he meets his old friend named Chuya. He frees Dazai, because he knows that Dazai is planning something, because he knows that Dazai cannot be kidnapped easily. Moving to the armed detective headquarters, they heard the news that Atsushi was kidnapped, then they immediately tried to save Atsushi. This time it is shown that Akutagawa is torturing Atsushi. Kyuya tries to help him, but he fails. Luckily, Kunikata comes to save them. But Atsushi didn't want to leave, because he wanted to beat Akutagawa. Suddenly Atsushi managed to control his strength. He was able to match Akutagawa's strength. After a long fight, Atsushi managed to defeat Akutagawa, then they returned safely. But it turns out that Akutagawa is still alive, because the Port Mafia managed to save him. This time it is shown that Dazai returns to the armed detective headquarters. It turns out that he managed to investigate the person who was targeting Atsushi's head. He is a man named Francis. He is the leader of the Fellowship of the Guild. Because of that, armed detective prepared to fight against them.